So let's get back into WrestleMania 8. The matches between our first main event and second main event, they're not really much to talk about.
You could switch this event off right now, right, and just watch the last 5 minutes.
However, you would miss
terrible.
the line of the night from Rick Martel where he's talking about the end. Tatanka, he goes, "There might not be a match because Tatanka is still out there scalping tickets." Which again is a comment you couldn't make today about Native American Indians. Which match 6 is Rick Martel versus Tatanka. You know, there's these Native Americans dancing in the ring.
To zero reaction from
the zero reaction. And amongst that on commentary, Heenan's having an absolute nightmare. Monster keeps shouting, "You're a liar, you're a liar," and Heenan just loses it for a minute. And that was very hilarious. The match itself was all right. It was fine. You got two decent workers. Tatanka wins with a body press. But I just want to say I'm a fan of both Tatanka and Rick Martel. I think Rick Martel plays the characters tremendously well.
Yeah, so once again, abrupt ending, quick match. I say flying body press, and I think there were some timing issues in the show, as we'll talk about in the coming matches. But yeah, I mean, Rick Martel was excellent. I think he kind of fell in love and out with the business over the years. And when he went to WCW, actually, he had this resurgence, but he got injured. But yeah, Rick Martel played his character to perfection. As we've discussed before, we didn't appreciate it at the time, but you certainly can now. Tatanka, this is going to be his hot streak till 93, and then I think, he falls away. But it was a great way to introduce him to the audience. This is your new young babyface, but the crowd wasn't really into this. And I think obviously they were seen so much in the previous match, and even with a break with promos and, backstage skits, they were still pretty tired. So, it was there, but it was one of those matches that WrestleManias at this time had these filler matches. So, it was just kind of there. I'd give it a 1 star.
Yeah, I would go 2 stars. I think it was not too bad. But moving on to a match that you hated, which is the World Tag Team title match between Money Inc., who are the champions, against the Natural Disasters. You know what? I didn't hate it, and
how could you not
why?
hate this?
I'll tell you why. Because I was watching it, and maybe I wasn't paying full attention to the match. But John Tenta seemed to be on having an audition for something, because he was dancing on Twinkle Toes. He was on fire. He was moving around like a panther, very nimble for a man of his size. And I thought it was pretty all action. It wasn't.
Man,
terrible.
come on. What? Okay, John Tenta and Earthquake was a great worker, right? But as good as he was here, Tugboat was terrible. I mean, Typhoon was terrible here, and Money Inc. weren't great, and the match was too long. And you know what the biggest surprise was? The crowd didn't give a damn. So, they've turned the Natural Disasters babyface here. The crowd wasn't into them as babyfaces.
Well, they don't make a great babyface team. They're natural heels. There's no reason to turn them babyface. I didn't understand that.
Yeah, so the
decision.
LOD, the pop that LOD got earlier in the show that's the team they want, right? So it was just plodding. I didn't think it worked well. It was too long. And there's a story behind that as well, which I'm not sure about. But, supposedly they were told to cut down their match. But Ted DiBiase felt that they will have the match that they were going to have, which they did. But I thought it was stinking, man. I mean, you're obviously saying it wasn't as bad, but then a terrible finish on top of that.
Yeah, so the terrible finish was really terrible. I mean, Money Inc. decided they're just going to walk out, and Natural Disasters won't even stop them, like most matches. And Money Inc. get themselves counted out, but keep the titles, a way to maybe protect Natural Disasters. But yeah, you're right, the ending was very screwy and didn't need to be. They could have had a proper finish to that match.
I think DiBiase did this repeatedly at WrestleMania over the last few years, when he was defending the $1 million title, or and here as well. So yeah, for me,
he could afford the fines like you.
Yeah, exactly, of course. But for me, this is a dud. Worst match of the card.
I'm gonna surprise you and give it 1 star at least. I was thinking about 2 stars for a second, but you talked me down into the 1 category.
Is it the worst match on this card?
No, I think that's the 8-man tag match is the worst match.
I think this is worse than that. At least even that was rubbish. But to me, this was just useless.
I want to watch it again after this show and give you my second opinion on it.
Yeah, both of them are crap, but I thought this was worse.
But let's move on to another match before the final main event. It's Owen Hart, who's making his WrestleMania debut against Skinner. This match, we can't even rate it. It was barely a couple of minutes long. Skinner getting all the offense and Owen Hart winning with a very plucky roll-up.
Yeah, he did. Well, yeah. So technically, it's not Owen Hart's debut, Wax. may I add here. His debut was actually WrestleMania 5 as the Blue Blazer. But yeah, as Owen Hart,
As
this is
Owen
his
Hart.
debut. He was obviously tagging with Jim the Animal Neidhart when we last spoke, but he's been fired, so he's got this kind of match here. Now, the issue with this was the timing, because there was actually supposed to be another match on this card as well, the British Bulldog against the Berserker. But what was happening was, because they were running against it, and actually this is going to be an issue they're going to have at the next two WrestleManias as well. They could only do so much, and as I said, the DiBiase match ran a bit. So supposedly, I'm not sure if this is true or not. They went backstage and they said to British Bulldog, "Your match is going to go ahead, but it's going to be a minute." And Davey Boy was moaning about that and saying he doesn't have minute matches. But
Yeah.
at the same time, Owen Hart and Skinner were more than happy with it, so they dropped that match and they had this really quick one. I say it was cool, for Owen to do the kind of reversal, come back and then the cover roll up. But yeah, it was just there. They're running out of time. It didn't really serve much of a purpose. So you wouldn't even give this a rating because it was so short.
It is the main event. It's Hulk Hogan versus Sid Justice. We get all the build up to it, with all the promos and everybody talking. We get a little promo from Sid as well, who comes up with maybe the second best line
He's hilarious
of the day when Mean Gene is asking him some questions. He goes,
Bro, shut up, you fat bald-headed little oaf!
which was tremendous. And people, give Sid a lot of shit for his promos, but I think while he's been in the WWF, he's actually been on fire.
Hilarious, man. He's just like, he just says a bunch of stuff, right? But he says it with so much intensity that, and that you like it, and it's hilarious when you actually, because he says something about he doesn't give a damn as well. But you don't. Somebody said, "What does he not give a damn about?" And it's just like, generally he's just angry, but it's hilarious. It was great. This, but interesting, there was no promo from Hulk Hogan, which I found really weird. But they did show the interview with Vince, where they're intimating that this will be his last match. But it was interesting that you didn't see Hogan at all prior to the main event.
But actually, it probably worked quite well in that they played that video of him saying maybe it's going to be his last match, so it added to the affair. Just going back to the Sid promo, Harvey Whippleman is with him, but you don't see him. Oh, you only see his hat because he's standing behind Sid for some reason, not in front of the camera, which I thought was quite funny as well. But Flash, why don't you take it away? The main event.
Yeah, so I guess you can look at this in two ways, right? In terms of a WrestleMania main event, it was bad. In terms of the work. But if you're looking at it from a crowd perspective, again, the crowd was into it. And I think at this point, with the way they'd played things, we've talked previously about Sid was getting bigger pops than Hogan and the issues around that. But here, very clearly, they were backing Hogan. Sid was the heel. But interestingly, there's a lot of action up front, which I found really interesting.
Which is why I think the crowd started hot and stayed.
Yeah, because it was kind of, they did all their stuff right in the beginning, which was good. But then when the match actually goes ahead, it becomes really slow and plodding. The crowd's still in it, but they are getting a little bit restless. And there was probably, comparing it to previous WrestleMania main events, and certainly the WWF title match we'd seen earlier, it wasn't great. And then obviously the finish has been of great discussion. But yeah, I mean, for me, not a great match. And then we get near the end, and the end sequence is quite interesting.
Let me just talk a little bit more about the match. I think when you're talking about a Hogan match, right, and you've got Sid involved, let's just take the wrestling aspect out of it, because it's not a match made for the purists, right? It is a match just all about the drama, about entertaining the audience, about telling a story. And I thought actually they tell that story quite well. Sid being the sort of vicious monster, and Hulk took a lot of bumps, including a sort of sit down choke slam, a power bomb, and a couple of sort of submission holds as well from Sid, some lackluster submission
but he
holds.
sold the power bomb, didn't he?
So that's the whole point, isn't it? He hulked up immediately after the most sensational finisher of the era, which is the power bomb. So I thought that was a typical Hogan. But yeah, he hulks up immediately after that, and that's where we sort of lead into the finish. But I think the crowd enjoyed it, and
the crowd made it. The crowd made this, and I didn't remember it being like, people call this an absolute dud, right? When you read the reviews and things, but when you go back and watch it, it's not as bad as people make it out to be. But it's because of what you'd seen earlier with the two matches, it's not at that level. But yeah, as you say, it's all about storytelling. The crowd was so into this. The commentary was decent. I don't know. I just felt Hogan can work better than this, and he just felt as if he was kind of in the middle of not going all out and kind of relaxing a bit, and Sid needs to feed off his opponent. So I just felt it could have been better. I mean, given the two guys, it wasn't going to be a classic. It wasn't a good WrestleMania main event if you just looked at this match in isolation. But, given the time, the storyline behind it, they weren't going to do a lot better than this unless Hogan really brought his working boots. But the ending is what people talk about more. And first, in terms of, the
match
bell
ending.
That's a great confusion. And, and then obviously the bit after that we'll talk about. But Sid basically kicks out of the leg drop, which has not happened up to this point. Because even with WrestleMania VI, when he beats the Warrior beats Hulk Hogan, he ducks out of the way of the leg drop from memory.
Yep.
My heel had never done this, but it wasn't actually supposed to happen, was it, Wax? That was the key thing, the story behind this match.
Well, that's it. And I think it's interesting that we'll talk a lot about what happened after WrestleMania, because I think that's almost just as interesting as the event itself. But was Harvey not supposed to interrupt at this point, earlier than he did?
So there's two stories to it. One story is what you're saying, that Harvey was supposed to get in the ring and interrupt things and then get disqualified. The other story is that Papa Shango, Charles White, missed his cue. So he was supposed to come out far earlier and he was supposed to break up the pin after the leg drop. But, nobody told him. And when he was told to run out, he did, but it was too late. So then they did the whole kind of Harvey on the apron and kind of disqualification, which looked a bit kind of, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. Now, from my perspective, it's interesting because Charles Wright has been doing some shoot interviews recently, and he's spoken about it. He goes, he asked the question, and he said he never got in trouble for supposedly missing his cue. He heard about it years later, so he thought he went out when he was supposed to. But others have been discussing this. But to me, just looking at it, it feels as if it would have made sense if Papa Shango came out, broke the count, they both beat him up, and then we get the ending. But there's obviously been some sort of botch there. The bottom line is Sid wasn't supposed to kick out. I find it hilarious that he did, and I mean, you can tell Hogan would have been pissed off about that. But we get this kind of screwy DQ finish here, and then Papa Shango does eventually come running down. Who's a newcomer here? He's had a few vignettes. He's had his debut on Superstars, so it's a bit surprising to see him here. But he obviously wants to come after the big fish, and he and Sid start beating up the Hulkster.
Yep. I mean, I find it odd that it was Papa Shango of all people that came into. Maybe you would expect Ric Flair or something to come out who'd been messing around with Hulk Hogan for some time. But it's Papa Shango. And just the way he was walking the thing, no wonder he was late. He was just taking his time.
He still plays character. But is this the end of Hulkamania, Wax? Was this the end?
I mean,
these guys are destroying him. They're destroying him.
They're just absolutely destroying him. And in we heard that iconic theme tune, which we played once before, and maybe we'll play again. And it's none other than the Ultimate Warrior. But one thing I noticed, the music was started playing, and some of the audience were very slow on the take. Maybe they couldn't hear the audio.
Then they go crazy.
Yeah, then they go crazy as soon as they see him. The people on the aisle. There's one guy in particular doing the sort of the thing that Warrior does on the banisters, which I thought was hilarious. And Warrior just sprints down. A very trim-looking Ultimate Warrior.
This had its own issues back then as well. So, the rumor was at the time, without the internet stuff, that this was a fake Ultimate Warrior. The real one had died. This one was a trimmer Ultimate Warrior. Some people said it was Texas Tornado, but we know that this was Jim Hellwig. He'd just been off the sauce, the juice, since we last saw him at SummerSlam 1991. So it's definitely him. He's got shorter hair as well, which makes him look a bit different. I mean, when you see him from a distance, he just looks like the old Warrior.
Yeah.
So when he gets in the ring and then he's posing, he just doesn't look the same. So, but the crowd is going nuts. And as you remember, it's in the archives, guys. Check it out. In my top 5 personal WrestleMania moments, this was in it. Still love watching it at the time. I remember going crazy. He was my favorite wrestler. He's like, oh, he's back. And he comes in and, he helps Hulk Hogan. Sid does hit him with a chair after he's wiped out Papa Shango, but then Hogan gets the chair and Sid's got this amazing look on his face, standing outside shocked, and we get the two men posing at the end of the show. So, a pretty mediocre match, Wax, but the ending is iconic and really memorable. And at this point, we believed Hulk Hogan was saying goodbye, but he's going and the Ultimate Warrior's here, so happy days.
Yeah, that's it, and that's how the show ends. And actually, it was only about 2 hours 40 minutes, so I didn't really understand the timing issue. Maybe that was just the cut version, maybe on the
on the network.
but it's very short for what WrestleManias are these days.
Because up to this point, even then, I think leading up to this, it was more 4-hour type events or longer than 3 hours, right?
Yeah.
So it does feel as if there might be some bits they've cut out here in terms of promos if we're watching it on the network. But yeah, they had, like I said, they had the timing issue this year. They're going to have it the next 2 years.
Yeah, just another thing I want to mention about the main event, Fash, is Sid gets away scot-free from the main event. I mean, he hardly gets any damage done to him by Hulk Hogan. He doesn't lose the match. He doesn't get any. Warrior doesn't get any shots on him. He basically just walks away to the back at the end of the ring. He's protected so much, despite this actually being his last big show.
But see, at this point, this was the thing. It wasn't meant to be his last show, was it? And we're going to talk about, like I said, this is where 1992 gets really interesting because we're going to see so many changes. But the plan here obviously was keep Sid strong. He's going to be the monster heel. Ultimate Warrior's here. We're going to get Ultimate Warrior versus Sid. So that's kind of colossal clash. So yeah, it's a disqualification victory for Hulk Hogan. So he gets to go across the sunset without, doing much in terms of a job. Sid didn't get pinned, so he's strong. The Warrior's back. So, I mean, they booked it in a way to keep everyone happy and with obviously plans in mind, but as you know, plans subject to change. But yeah, you say Sid was, the whole time Sid has been presented bulletproof, and it's a shame because, say, this is going to be the end, as you've alluded to, for his pay-per-view run. We're not going to see him again until WrestleMania 11 in terms of pay-per-view, or we wouldn't have thought it here. But yeah, it's been we'll talk about it maybe in the next episode, but we've probably done more analytics on this run of Sid's than anyone else has. And when you think about how it started and how it ends, there's so much that happened in a very short space of time.
So yeah, let's just talk about overall Fast the event. For me, WrestleMania has to deliver WrestleMania moments, and for me, there were 3 that I just want to mention that have lived with me, forever, and that's Bret versus Piper, the Macho Man Ric Flair match, and then obviously the return of Warrior, which I know was very special to you. So on that basis, this show is getting a thumbs up for me.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, for me, the moments, going back to, and it is all about moments, as you say, was, that reversal pin by Bret Hart and the match itself. The Undertaker doing the tombstone outside. Now, it doesn't look as impressive now, but I remember at the time it was, and the way, he dismantled Jake Roberts. Ric Flair, Macho Man, and this ending here is something that, I still enjoy. So I think it had its moments, but then there was a lot of guff as well. I mean, there's a lot of crappy stuff here.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not as clear cut. I think because of the nostalgia, because of these moments that I think still work, I'll give it a thumbs up, but it's kind of partial. It's for more middle of the road. But yeah, I think, it was special for us, and you'd still going back, watch those moments and, fast forward the rest of it because there is a lot of crap on here as well.
Yep. So coming up, Fash, it's the rest of 1992, a very, very interesting year. You probably won't recognize this part of 92 versus the second half of 92.
Yeah.
That's what makes this year so interesting, and the year that we really got into wrestling. Anything else to add for today?
Yeah, no, I mean, I just we'll probably in the next episode talk about, other things that have been going on in the wrestling business. Lots of things have been going on. There's been a whole bunch of releases which have been pretty controversial. There's the whole A&E documentaries versus Dark Side of the Ring. So there's some different narratives there. So I think there's lots of stuff going on right now, which is quite interesting. As you see, we're continuing with the timeline and we'll do some specials as well. So yeah, I guess in the next episode, maybe we can cover a few different topics. But in the meantime, please subscribe to the channel. Check out our archives. A lot of what we've spoken about up to now links into this event really well. But until then, he's Wax, I'm Fash, and this is Wrestling with Memories.